So welcome to the webinar. We're going to go over surprisingly simple ways to reduce your blood pressure with food. This is about optimizing the way you eat, optimizing your metabolism. Oh, hi, Mom. She's using the chat function. So let's get into it. This is being recorded. I will use it for future promotional reasons. So don't share any personal information you don't want the general public to hear. And also, I'm a health coach and I have a holistic health education, but I'm not a doctor. I'm not a nutritionist. So please consult with your doctor if you take any of this advice in the presentation. Again, my name is April Equate. I'm a wellness coach specifically for people with hypertension, high blood pressure, who are looking to make lifestyle changes to lower their blood pressure. Like I said, I'm also a holistic health educator, and I was trained at Mayo Clinic. So pop quiz. Is high blood pressure a disease or a symptom? You can unmute your mic and say something or enter it in the chat if you'd like to respond. So most people look at high blood pressure as a disease within itself, right? But actually, yes, you're correct. It is symptoms. It's a sign of something. Hypertension is usually a sign of some type of physical stress, chemical or emotional stress. It's basically your body responding to stress. And your body has to increase your blood pressure to have that appropriate response. And usually the solution to this, to these stressors, are lifestyle changes, whether it's food, how you deal with stress, how you sleep, and so on. So there's two forms of hypertension. You have essential hypertension, which most people have that form, which is why I discussed. That's usually caused by lifestyle issues and stress. Now, the secondary hypertension is when it's associated with another actual disease, like a thyroid disease or a kidney disease. Today, we're focusing on essential hypertension. Hypertension is a part of something called metabolic syndrome, which is a lot of disease they roll together, such as type 2 diabetes, high blood pressure, high blood sugar, excess fat around the waist, which is your visceral fat. And all these fall under the umbrella of metabolic syndrome because they all relate to the metabolic process. And today we're going to focus on that piece of metabolism and how your body metabolizes food can create some of these conditions. And it's usually a combination of improper metabolism and the other sources of stress. So why does food matter? The wrong food can cause both physical and chemical stress, but ultimately it will cause emotional stress as well. And so this is because, some foods are full of toxins. That's a chemical stress on the body. Some foods we eat, it's hard to digest, like complex carbs. And that effort your body has to put into digestion is a physical stress. Excess waste can be created when you're not properly digesting your food, which creates more physical stress and sometimes chemical stress. Also, imbalanced nutrition, like you might have foods like donuts that have way too much sugar and oil. That's really hard for your body to process. That's additional stress on the body. So when your body's working on digesting these foods, your blood pressure has to go up. Why is it very important to talk about toxicity in food? It's common. A lot of our foods, even our plants, have toxins in them. So, our veggies and fruits are prone to and exposed to herbicides, pesticides, fungicides. And a lot of times if you eat meat, the meat's not very healthy, the animal wasn't treated well, it's full of parasites. And so those parasites from the food get into your digestive tract. All this is toxic to your body. A lot of foods have excess sugar. We know a lot of foods have excess sodium. And all of that, at some point, if you're constantly eating improperly, that's toxic to your body. And your body's always trying to eliminate those toxins. And in its effort to eliminate the toxins and clean your blood, you put pressure on your heart and your kidneys. So I'm going to focus in on high sodium. Everybody knows, every time you hear about high blood pressure, somebody says something about sodium. So let's get into that. I want to bring questions to how much sodium is enough sodium, right? Is lower actually better? The FDA says the average person in America should consume 2,300 milligrams. It's just about 1 teaspoon of salt per day or less. And everybody with high blood pressure, you probably had your doctor say something similar. Sometimes they even go as far down as 1,500 milligrams a day. I've done some research and I've seen studies that say a lower salt intake does not necessarily equate to lower blood pressure. This study showed that actually people who took 1 to 2 teaspoons of salt a day, which is a little bit more than a daily recommended by the FDA, didn't see any increased risk in cardiovascular health. It's only when you get to 5 grams a day or more do you start seeing high blood pressure. So now I'm going to play a video. This is Dr. Ken. He knows a lot about salt, the keto diet, and hypertension. And I want him to explain further, what's the sodium myth. So let me know if you can hear this video.
Hey, this is Dr. Berry. For the next few minutes, let's talk about a very important health and nutrition topic. Ball, in way of looking at this, then please click the subscribe button and the little bell button right beside it so that every time I have a bright idea, you'll be one of the very first people to know. Now let's dig into this. So sodium is part of salt, sodium chloride. Sodium is essential for the proper cell membrane function of every single cell in your body. Okay, in order for cell membranes to pass particles in and out and chemicals in and out and elements in and out of the cell, it has to have sodium. That's not optional, okay? Your body controls your serum sodium level in your bloodstream very, very tightly because if it's too low or too high, it can be a problem, and your body knows this. So where in the world, if sodium is so essential, where did we get this idea that it's bad for us? Where did that come from? Well, you may not believe this story, but you can look at the links below and you can do some Googling and you can find out this is absolutely true. This idea came from one guy, and then another guy put it into action for all the citizens of the United States. So the one guy was a doctor by the name of Louis Dahl, and he was researching sodium metabolism back in the 60s and 70s. He did his research on rodents, either rats or mice, but not on humans. And he would give these rodents the equivalent of 100 times the amount of salt or sodium that the average human would eat. And so it was a ridiculous amount of sodium. And when he did that, he would actually, it would make the rodents have high blood pressure. So we're not talking about humans here, we're talking about rodents. And we're talking about a dose of sodium 100 times greater than any human being would ever in their life eat. Okay. And so he published his results and it kind of caught on because a lot of scientists thought, I bet salt's bad for you because we love it so much because anything you love has to be bad, right? And so he published his findings, and about this same time in the 70s, there was a select committee in Congress that was trying to come up with guidelines of what United States citizens should eat and what they should avoid. And this was headed by the other one guy whose name was Senator George McGovern. You may have heard of him. And so in 1977, they actually did publish these guidelines, which had lots of foolishness in them. And it also had this salt recommendation to eat less salt. They wanted you to eat less than 3 grams of salt a day or sodium a day. And that was their guidelines. And so this came from one researcher doing research on rodents and using sodium levels hundreds of times higher than a human would ever eat. And then all of a sudden, it was part of the official federal government guidelines. Not kidding. That's how it happened. And so the hypothesis that Dr. Dawes and then Senator McGovern believed to be true was that if you eat too much sodium, it's going to increase your blood pressure, and that increased blood pressure might make you have a heart attack, and then that heart attack might make you die. And so therefore, too much sodium increases your risk of dying. Okay, that's their hypothesis. But when you actually go back and look at all the meaningful research in humans, even humans with severe heart failure, what you find is that when you restrict sodium in human beings, they die sooner from all causes. Mortality goes up. And so the less salt you...
So I just want you guys to kind of hear someone else say it a little differently. So the question on the table is how much sodium is enough sodium? And I want to caution you not to lower your sodium too much because your body needs sodium to function. Here's some more evidence. There's a study that showed some people actually died of heart failure because they limited their sodium intake too much. So be very cautious of that. The next question is the type of sodium. Which type of sodium is the right type? Table salt is usually what you find in processed foods, and like chips and pretzels and like everything you eat, like donuts. And even, in your salt shaker at home, a lot of people just have table salt. So that's sodium chloride, and sometimes they'll add iodine. But that salt was created, like it was manufactured. It's not a natural salt. Natural salts are your sea salt, Celtic salt, pink Himalayan salt, and they're composed of sodium chloride, but they also have potassium in it. They also have magnesium in there. And so there's more of a balanced electrolyte ingredients there in your sea salt, which is natural. So sometimes you might want to look at the type of salt you're consuming and make sure you're not consuming too much sodium, of course, but don't consume too little. In addition to looking at sodium, now you have to look at potassium. Potassium balances sodium out. Our ancestors consumed, 3 or 4 times more potassium than sodium. And in America these days we flipped it, and we actually consume more sodium than potassium. And a lot of that is what leads to high blood pressure. So on average, the RDA says get between 3,500 to 4,700 milligrams daily, which is 2 times the amount of salt that they recommend. So try to aim for that. If you're looking for something to replace table salt, try this potassium-based salt. So you can see it has 640 milligrams of potassium, but no sodium. So that might be healthier for you. So far, does anybody have any questions or any input they'd like to add? Okay, so I'll just move on to kind of wrap this up a little bit. What's the wrong food? Food with excess sodium amounts, wrong food. Processed foods are nutrient void, right? They don't have much nutrition, but they do have a lot of sugar. They do have a lot of sodium. And of course, that's not doing anything for you health-wise and can be adding to your hypertension. Canned food, nutrient void. You want to avoid that as much as possible. Meats like pork are usually way too high in sodium. Sodas have too much sugar and too much caffeine. And so all that stimulation wears on your adrenal glands, but also it forces your blood pressure to go up, right? It forces you to work your heart harder. And if you have hypertension, that's not what you want to do. Energy drinks as well, we know aren't very healthy for you. The right food is always nutrient dense. It's usually fresh. I mean, you eat different types of veggies, leafy green veggies, bell peppers. Most veggies are healthy. Fruits are all good. They have a lot of potassium in it. They have the proper potassium sodium balance that you want. Look for foods that are easily digested. If you often eat and you tend to feel kind of tired after, that means you ate too much, or the type of food you ate is hard on your digestive system. So if you have hypertension, like I said, you don't want to add to physical stress by improper food. So eat food that is good for you. Like if you could eat a full plate of veggies and some fish and feel great, then that's probably okay. But if it makes you feel tired, then you probably overate. Maybe minimize the fish. Always try to go for organic, which in the United States, you're not going to get away from pesticides and herbicides, but you can minimize your exposure if you buy organic produce. Another thing is mineral water is actually shown in studies to lower blood pressure. So mineral water, you should have the calcium and magnesium in it. And that magnesium helps to regulate proper heart function. And normal water, like spring water that doesn't have minerals in it, helps normalize your blood pressure, but mineral water actually helps lower it. So look into that. There's something called DASH diet, the dietary approaches to stop hypertension. So this is specifically made for people with hypertension. You don't know really what to eat. In general, they kind of emphasize whole grains, veggies, and fruits. So you'll see some meals in there, a lot of meals that will have oatmeal and beans and things like that, and they'll always have hefty amount of veggies on the side. They allow for poultry and fish, but it's smaller amounts. So go to dashdiet.org to get more information on that. So now I'm going to go into another aspect of eating, which is, what time. Like, this is something people don't talk about a lot, but it's a right and wrong time to consume food. Okay, there's a certain time your body's ready to eat. And this is in tune with your circadian rhythm, which is your biological clock. And these two things are regulated by the sun, right? So that your irides see daylight, they come through your eyes, and it goes to your pineal gland, which is your master gland. And that gland tells your body whether or not it's time to wake up or go to sleep, right? And so we're in tune, very in tune with the nature. And so the best times to eat happen to be at high noon and then daytime hours. Your biggest meal should be somewhere around noon, between 11 and 1 p.m., because that's when your body is best able to metabolize food. And then after 3 p.m., your metabolism drops a little bit, it slows down. And at night, it gets extremely slow. And a lot of people like to eat their biggest meal like at night, but that's actually the worst time to eat a big meal because your body's already a little sluggish and it's kind of just ready to relax. All right, other kind of miscellaneous tips include not eating after 7, not eating 2 hours of bedtime. If you do, that food will just sit in your belly and it'll be there in the morning and it will not be digested. Don't eat first thing in the morning. The first thing your body needs after 6-8 hours of sleep is water. So you just really need to hydrate in the morning. Don't worry about a big meal. So many tips. So, don't drink while you eat. You're trying to eat so that you actually get nutrition from your food. If you drink while you eat, you water down your stomach acid. So that means your body can't break the food down properly. And so you don't really get the benefit of the nutrients in the food. Eat dessert after dinner. If you have to have dessert, kind of eat it when you're mostly full so that you don't overeat the dessert. Another thing about being full. When you're eating, you feel full, just stop eating. Like, we've been taught to kind of eat everything on the plate, right? Even if we're still full and our belly's about to pop. But, stop doing that, because the more calories you eat, the lower your lifespan. So I'm going to play another video where a doctor kind of talks about the relationship between calorie intake, no matter the source, and lifespan.
Let's talk about a couple components of diet and nutrition that I think cause a lot of confusion for people still today, because we hear a lot of different things. Carbohydrates, we hear good, bad. What do we need to know about their role?
Well, there's only 3 sources of calories. They're called macronutrients. That's fat, carbohydrate, and protein. What you have to know is that excess calories shorten your lifespan, no matter which one you eat. Okay. So too many carbohydrates shorten your lifespan, too much fat shortens your lifespan, and too much protein shortens your lifespan. The only thing ever been proven in the history of science to radically extend lifespan of all species of animals, including primates like us, is moderate caloric restriction in an environment of micronutrient excellence. In other words, we need to diet with a lot of nutrients but not eating excess calories. And the point I'm making here today is that when you eat a diet of micronutrient excellence, it suppresses your desire to overeat calories. So the secret to controlling the driver to overeat calories, how we ratchet down, turn down the apostat, is by eating more high nutrient plant foods. And how we ratchet up the apostat to make it become...
So that's basically the main point I want you to hear, is that calorie intake has a direct relationship to your years on Earth. So be very cautious to not overeat.
Let's talk about a couple.
All right, so now we're getting into like how you eat. We talk about what time, what to eat, what not to eat. Now let's talk about how you eat. Because most of us, we get a nice sandwich, We take like 4 bites of the sandwich and it's gone after that. Because we're not chewing enough. We need to break down our food, slow down when you eat. Chew at least 30 times before you even swallow. Give your metabolism a head start. Break down that food into smaller particles. This increases the chances of proper digestion, actually getting nutrition from food. Also, when you eat, it's best to eat when you're relaxed. They call it the parasympathetic state. Parasympathetic just means you're relaxed, right? And that's the best time to digest food because that's the time your body's taking its energy and it has it to put into the food. If you're eating kind of in the middle of the day when you're busy or you're stressed, your body will take the energy to respond to the stress. It's not going to use it to digest the food. So try to be in a nice environment, be resting, and be at peace when you eat your food. Another aspect of how to eat is something called food combining. Right? Food combining is basically the principle that not all foods should be eaten together. Some foods, because of the time they digest, don't work well with other foods. So for example, fruit is a simple food. It takes 15 to 30 minutes to digest fruit. But on the other hand, meat can take 2 to 3 hours to digest because it's so complex. So you don't eat fruit with meat because the fruit will ferment. And there's different rules, like don't combine starches and proteins. They digest at different rates. And also they both are actually kind of hard to break down. So you don't want to put such a burden on your body. A lot of our favorite meals kind of are like meat and potatoes. Like that's not actually a good combination. That's why you get tired after you eat, because you didn't put a big burden on your digestive tract. And kind of more rules about food combining here. If you like to eat beans, no, that's not compatible with fruit and milk and cheese and eggs. Mix your beans with veggies and other grains and nuts. So I had some questions people asked me before the webinar. Someone asked, what fruits might help lower your blood pressure? I would say generally all fruits, because they all have potassium, sodium, they're simple, they're easy to digest. Anything on here, bananas, oranges, cantaloupes, like all these are good for your blood pressure. Just know to eat fruit by itself. So maybe start your day off, not start your day off, because you're going to start your day off with some water. But your first meal or your best snack of the day, I don't know when that would be, maybe after lunch, like just eat a bowl of fruit by itself. And another person asked, how can you be salt-free? We kind of went over it. You don't want to be exactly salt-free, but if you just kind of want to know how to season your food better, I mentioned potassium salt. Miss Dash is a good seasoning. There's all types of fresh spices and plants like oregano, basil, cilantro. All those are very good to cook with and give your food some flavor. There might be a time if you do consume a lot of table salt that you kind of have to adjust your taste buds to like not crave it, but your body will adapt to it. Just keep at it. So I know this is probably a lot of information, right? Like kind of threw a lot at you. There's still a lot more to say about how to eat properly, especially as it relates to hypertension. But if you are feeling more overwhelmed, like you need more help, let's talk. I offer a strategy session. It's a one-on-one session. We discuss like where you are as far as your diet and your high blood pressure and where you want to be. And we start to create steps to get there, steps to eating better. And it's a 30-day plan I'll have written up and drawn up for you at the end of our conversation that you can use to start eating better. And so for now, I'd like to open the floor up to any questions or comments anybody may have. Okay, that's a good question. How long should you wait to drink after eating? So you'll want to, let's talk about before eating first. You should drink 30 minutes before you eat and no sooner. Now, when it comes to after you eat, it depends on what you ate. So if you ate fruit, you can probably have a drink 15 to 30 minutes after that. because it doesn't take long to digest. When it comes to meat, at least wait an hour. It'd be better if you waited 2. And that's because meat, you need your stomach acid to break meat down. And water dilutes that stomach acid. So it's not a good idea ever to drink water and eat meat at the same time. But especially even after that, yeah, I would wait at least an hour. But that's a good question. Just a general practice is just wait at least 30 minutes to an hour no matter what you eat. But know if you ate some meat, whether or not it's chicken, red meat, or even fish, wait even longer than that, an hour to 2. So if there are any more questions, I know some things kind of dwell in the back of your head, you might not know when to ask them, but this is the time to ask them because I'm here. But if you do come up with something later, you can always email me at april@healthatheart.com. Also, you can follow me on Facebook and send me a message whenever you have a question. All right, somebody asked, as a breakfast food, are blackberries and yogurt okay? And so that's a good question because you always see those like fruit and berries combined with yogurt. So the thing is, based on proper food combining, you should never eat fruit with any other type of food, right? You will, that blackberry is not going to digest well. Like you'll get the benefits of the yogurt, but you're not going to get the benefits of the blackberries. You might just eat the blackberries before you eat your yogurt. I'm almost thinking of if you have blackberries, what I've done is I put blackberries and strawberries in the bowl, sometimes with some pears that I dice up, and I'll just pour a little bit of like apple juice or orange juice on it and use that to kind of replace the yogurt. So you don't feel like you're missing out on something. So it can still be hearty, but you're just gonna have to add more fruit and maybe add some juice or a puree of some fruit. I don't see any more questions coming in, but let's stay connected. And thanks for watching. I'll just stay up for another 10 minutes just in case somebody thinks of a question. But thank you for attending. Okay, so when it comes to water intake, the rule of thumb is drink half your body weight in ounces. So if you're a 150-pound woman, you would drink 75 ounces of water per day. And I would say that's the bare minimum because you want to consider everything you eat and drink that takes water out of you. So if you're a coffee drinker, you took some water out of you. If you like pasta, to process pasta, your body will use water, so it takes it out of you. If you even work out and sweat a lot, like that bare minimum is probably not enough. You want to add to it according to your lifestyle. But again, I'll just say it's half your body weight in ounces. If you give me your email, I can send you a download of the presentation. You can private message me your email. I'll send it to you. You're welcome. I'll remember to do that. Does anyone else want to download the presentation? I have a question for you guys. Do you understand the sodium conversation? Like, was that clear? Or is there more information that you might need about that? Okay, good. It sounds like it was clear to everyone. I'll wait another 5 minutes if you have more questions. If not, feel free to leave the meeting. Okay, yeah, your doctor said to not salt your food. So one thing is true. If you're eating right, you shouldn't need to add any sodium to your food, for seasoning. If you're eating right, the food you eat already has sodium in it, and that ought to be enough. People usually just use the salt for flavor, and if you want to remove that salt, replace it with spices and herbs, that's a good idea. But I would still watch, maybe take a week to actually count how many milligrams of sodium you're getting from both your food and added seasoning. Because if it's not at least 2,300 milligrams, it might not be enough. And so doctors might say something in general, like don't add salt. Maybe go back to your cardiologist and say, well, how much is enough? Like, because you want more clarity on what's enough for you. Because it does get dangerous. At least studies show it does get dangerous to have possibly less than 2,300. So I hope my answer, made sense. You might have more questions for your cardiologist and ask them to get more specific as far as milligrams and teaspoons. Yeah, pepper is generally okay. The only thing for women, sometimes if we have too much spice, it can irritate our gastrointestinal tract and our gut lining. So pepper, black pepper is usually okay. Cayenne pepper can be sometimes too spicy. So you kind of want to watch for that and, maybe do it in moderation. But as far as your blood pressure, I haven't seen a correlation between black pepper and high blood pressure. I guess if that's it, I'll go ahead and close the webinar. And thank you guys for attending. There will be more, so watch out for more. I'll try to do these actually bi-weekly and just, do Q&A at the end and make sure I'm trying to, answer everybody's questions. All right, so you guys have a nice weekend.